As a species, human beings gravitate towards simplicity. I mean, we absolutely love it, which goes a long way towards explaining why memes are so popular. And yes, I love a meme. Now, understanding DeFi protocols requires a colossal level of DeFi Q. But for these last few glorious months, the glittering masses were able to reduce it to one simple equation. Farm token. Token go up.
You want to be a farmer? Here's a couple of acres.
But this week, we were sharply reminded that governance tokens are actually supposed to do something, represent something. They have, whisper it, an actual purpose. What is it?
I don't know.
Well, yeah, duh. It's governance, which is by far the most nebulous, political, complicated element of any blockchain protocol's makeup. And one with the most far-reaching consequences too.
I want to be the governor for the people. I want to represent everybody.
Now this is one giant rabbit hole, and frankly, it makes my brain hurt. But we'll kick off by looking specifically at 1inch and Curve. But trust me, this is a subject we're going to be hearing a great deal more about in the coming months, and it will most likely get very ugly.
It's an ugly thing.
Taking a long, hard look at the governance wars, this is the Defiant. Any community, large or small, requires a system of rules to ensure its survival. Survive, then thrive. Now, researching a screenplay a few years back, I spent many hours investigating intentional communities living in remote areas of the US. Every single one of them failed. And without exception, it was because of poor governance. Blockchain communities are really no different to these utopian ones living off the land. DeFi savants now farm digital yams. But the dynamics are the same.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Now the issue is this: governance introduces friction. There is no such thing as 100% agreement. Governance also introduces power dynamics. Whether by luck or judgment, an individual can rapidly find themselves in a position of major strength within a protocol due to the weight of their ownership. And the natural instinct here is to protect that position. And suddenly those who might not have been political before have something at stake and will make their voices heard to protect it. Now, what's fascinating about blockchain is how quickly this happens. This, of course, alongside the usual whales and big players who simply move weight early and introduce cartel behavior. Ironically, the great promise of blockchain opening up access and democratizing finance for the underprivileged is subject to the same rules of the real world. The rich get richer and the minnows get squeezed out. In other words, plutocracy. When there's massive money to be made, as there is in DeFi right now, well, you know what happens. But what's really at stake in the governance of these blockchain protocols?
It definitely is kind of the holy grail to which all of these protocols and DeFi applications are aspiring to. Because you can have, a lending and borrowing or DEX that's permissionless and open on Ethereum, but it can still be centralized on a team that's calling all the shots. And so that's still, not much progress from our traditional financial system that's ruled by a small group of people and, where you need to trust others to make the right call with your money. And that's the case for much of DeFi at the moment. But the trend that we've seen in the past few months is that these teams are trying to increasingly give up their control of these protocols. And the way to do this is through governance. You'll need some sort of decision-making mechanism to upgrade the protocol when it's needed to make changes. Community, boils down to token holders. And the token is the tool that allows token holders to participate in these decision-making processes. So in the end, governance tokens are so key to these protocols because they enable kind of this holy grail of finally having decentralized finance become decentralized.
Now, you might remember when YEarn's Wifey token launched, there was some concern that Andre could mint tokens whenever he wanted. But he, brave soul and kind soul that he was, gave up control of the governance contract to a group of 9 community members who enjoy very limited powers, with all major governance decisions carried out by on-chain voting. What's important here is that Wi-Fi was launched in what is now considered the most fair way possible. Andre could have awarded himself founder rewards or a pre-mine, but he didn't. He kept 0 tokens for himself. Anyone who held tokens back then earned them fair and square by yield farming. Now go back 6 months and you could have expected around single-digit percentage participation in governance. But now there's some chips on the table. People want in. The issue that I see is that the more money you have, the more voting power you have. And so really what we're doing is just replicating traditional structures of power, but in a digital space. So really, when you talk about being decentralized, what you're talking about is no one's really paying attention to us yet. So we have this sort of protected community, free from the capitalism, market forces that plague everything else. Surely we're just going to see those same structures replicated, cartel behavior, whales moving in and taking an oversized position and unduly influencing the protocol. Isn't that basically what's going to happen here?
Yeah, I think that's bound to happen, but there are key features of how like blockchain protocols and applications work that still make it better than what we have in the traditional system. And I think that one is the fact that it's still an open system and that everyone has kind of the same opportunity to gain control of voting power, essentially to buy tokens. So yeah, in the end, that means that people who have more money will be able to get more tokens and will be able to get more voting power, but anyone will have the same opportunity to do that. Another difference is that while you can have single whales, you can also have this sort of like representative democracy where a bunch of smaller token holders group together and can vote together for different proposals, rivaling kind of the whale's weight in the protocol. And then another feature which I think makes this a little bit better is just transparency. You always have the track record of how people voted, and that's not the case in traditional like finance and government, where many times things happen behind closed doors and you don't have kind of certainty of who's doing what. In these like token-based governance systems, you always know the history of like how people have acted in the past, and what that does is create more accountability.
Now, YEarn has set a pretty high bar, or maybe that's where the bar should be all the time, who knows? But with a community as passionate and tight-knit as DeFi, every other project has to be prepared for heavy scrutiny and skepticism over what's fair and what isn't. And that brings us neatly to Curve and 1inch. Now, we covered the launch of the Curve token in last week's video, but if you missed it, you can check it out here. But that wasn't the end of the craziness. It all began with a $60 million spike in the Curve pool on Compound after the Curve reward APY jumped to over 300%. And this all happened after Curve announced a vote locking mechanism. This allowed depositors to boost their rewards by 2.5x by locking them up as VE-CRV tokens and voting on the weighting of different pools with a feature called Gauge Weight Vote.
We wanted for the stakeholders in our governance to be aligned with the future of Curve. When the voting power is just proportional to the number of tokens, it's not always necessarily the case. Somebody can just buy a lot of tokens, vote for something, and then sell them. With the vote locking mechanism, the voting power is proportional to the time left before the unlock. That means that whoever has the most voting power also has the most at stake.
And of course, this prompted some very hefty flexing. Julian Bouteloup from the British Blockchain Association was the first to notice. Governance war on fire! Someone bought KRV on the bucket, pushing the bar up. Lot of CRV into Cove Down, use Gauge Weight to outvote for Compound Pool to make rewards on steroids 307%! Governance power! Tip someone from Compound Finance or a nice Comp BC. Smiley face. Flex it! This move had huge ramifications for the YEarn ecosystem, given the major role played by YCRV, and it was taken as a sign of war.
Yes, it's war!
For comp and Wi-Fi holders.
It was a moment where you start seeing what happens when there's actual money at stake, and when you have that, how can interested parties begin to exert their influence on these protocols. If you have one big token holder that can influence a protocol to their benefit, they're gonna do it. And this is what's been going on with Curve holders and Yearn holders, each trying to put their tokens to get the most rewards for their token holders. I think it's fair game, honestly. It's how the market works. It's how these things were designed. Ideally, they shouldn't be concentrated on one holder, because it's all in the open. People will get outraged and point this out and encourage other people to kind of jump in and kind of balance the scale.
Now, what happened next was that YEarn passed a vote to lock around $2 million of early liquidity provider CRV treasury in the DAO for a 2.5x multiplier on all future rewards, making it the curve pool with the highest CRV APY at any given time. Nice flex, Andre. Now, bear in mind that this meant locking their entire CRV treasury for 4 years. Now, in crypto terms, was not just one lifetime, it's like 10. That's a really long time.
But wait! There's more!
Apparently, in response to this, Curve's core team also locked up their own tokens, overpowering YEarn's and every other token in the voting escrow, giving themselves 71% of the DAO's governance power. And this created a situation in which quorum, currently set at 30%, could only be reached if the Curve team participated in voting. And as Andre himself pointed out, so at Curve Finance founder just took over 71% of the voting power. And since founder rewards are significantly higher than LPs and other voters, pretty much locked everyone else out. So guest voting is pointless now. Good luck, everyone. Curve's founder Michael Egroff publicly stated that he overreacted.
Please don't overreact.
While other Curve supporters are claiming that it was a fat finger mistake.
Teams who do this sort of thing, their reputation is on the line. If they keep doing this, people will be less incentivized to participate. If they know, at any one time, the team can kind of take all their tokens and throw them in a smart contract and have things go their own way. If there's kind of the perception that this is the way things will play out, then they lose trust and people will start to move away from these platforms. I think, it's kind of what, as soon as kind of the community starts perceiving that the team is acting in a way that's maybe unfair or not to the broader community's benefit, they'll start to move away from those protocols.
With a little hindsight, it's pretty clear that Michael was in fact not overreacting at all.
In retrospect, it's encouraged a lot of people to lock the tokens. Michael's share is down to about 30%, and we expect it'll go down further in the next few days.
The whole situation basically shocked the community into action, self-managing a solution, but not before a healthy dose of millennial outrage. But that wasn't the only project feeling the heat of the outrage cannon this week. 1inch, the largest DEX aggregator, came under fire after announcing the distribution of its 1inch token. Liquidity providers to 1inch's new automated market maker DEX, Mooniswap, are set to earn 1-year locked tokens for adding liquidity to selected pairs before the token launch. Now, 1inch will distribute 2% of tokens to early Mooniswap liquidity providers and 21% to ecosystem growth. And this really pissed people off. But why was it such a big deal?
If this had happened last year, maybe it wouldn't have outraged people as much as it did now. But the standards and the bar has been raised. I think, starting with YFI, I think that was a defining moment of this new trend of tokens, that there's this expectation that new token launches in DeFi should be for the community in the larger percent. Wi-Fi was 100% community owned, and it spurred this whole trend because people realized, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Like if you're creating a governance token that's meant to allow users of the platform to influence the platform, why should anyone else hold it? It should be in the hands of the community. And so many of the tokens after Wi-Fi or most of them in DeFi have gone largely to the community. So when 1inch, they announced their token, and this could have been kind of a curve moment, kind of this like well-known large project in DeFi going with launching their token, but it kind of backfired because unlike something like Wi-Fi where 100% of the tokens were going to the community, 1inch had only 20% or so of the tokens going to the community. So it obviously kind of rubbed people the wrong way, would be an understatement.
For comparison, here's how other prominent DeFi projects are treating LP reward allocations. YEarn is giving you 100%, Balance is 65%, Curve 62%, M-Stable 45%, Compound 42.3%, and if you provide me with any liquidity, I will give you nothing at all.
Those projects are governance projects. We are different. Yeah, we are going to release permissionless protocols. You don't need a governance there. Yeah, you need a utility token which secures the network. Yeah, by staking, by some other techniques which we plan to announce soon. The thing is about team tokens. It's very normal that the team get tokens to be motivated to deliver free products for you. We are building not for investors. We are not building for ourselves. We are building for you who use that product, and will use. And that's very important to understand.
But it wasn't just the tokenomics. The project's social media strategy was also savaged. DeFi Prime was particularly clinical. I think 1inch just needs to grow up and get over running social media like they're just the hackathon winners. And if we look at the tone of a recent post, maybe they had a point. The post reads, "Are you satisfied with 1inch token distribution scheme? A, yes, 21% plus 2% is what I deserve as an LP. B, no, users LPs are life breath of this shit and deserve more than team. C, I'll let the experts decide. And D, LPs can issue their own version of token for themselves. Schooled you, didn't we?"
What we do in the DeFi space, it's about freedom and also fun. Yeah. So if we see a lot of people who write really bad comments about us, and that's okay. That's the life. We appreciate any feedback, and we work on everything what we are doing on us as well. So for sure, it's not nice to see a lot of bad comments, but that's okay. I already said, and we apologize if we already said wrote something what it looks like it's quite aggressive or something like that. We are not English native, and we answer how we can answer.
In all seriousness now, researching this piece, I was struck by just how funny this all is. So much of this behavior wouldn't be out of place on the playground at my kid's school. The instant outrage, the pouting, the oversensitivity, and the speed of resolution. It's just a load of handbags. Now, it's really easy to be critical of a team's decision in hindsight once you've seen it play out. But it's far harder to game it out before you actually launch. And it's really easy to cry "scam" and sulk in the corner rather than demonstrating empathy and understanding that this is bleeding-edge psychosocial engineering with radical economics strapped on top. There are no rules yet, no best practices, and more often than not, naivety is the only crime.
At the moment, nobody really knows how governance should work in decentralized systems. Everybody's experimenting and nothing is really set in stone. There's the possibility to add vote delegation or a liquid democracy system. At the moment, we're still experimenting and we are in very early phases. There will be cartels and there will be attempts to use money to affect governance. But that's also part of the game when you make governance a token that can be traded. There's no better way unless identity problem gets solved. There's probably going to be disagreements between governance participants, and that also creates demand for the tokens. There are a lot of forces at play on Curve, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out.
So my message to the community, we love you, we built for you, and of course we need support, and we appreciate any feedback, negative or positive. You are very welcome, and we improve everything what we do. If you see any FUD, any haters comments, just verify. You don't have to trust us. Yeah, just verify, and yeah, that's it.
Our own Kupertali made the point that the standard to which the community is holding token projects to is incredibly bullish. The giant flex in Curve shocked that community into redressing the balance, and it did it really fast. And as we stare down the upcoming US elections, we'll be reminded once more of the danger of voter apathy and non-participation. And if all it takes is trigger-happy social media outrage to achieve a better outcome, well, I think we're doing all right. And maybe there's a solution to voter apathy with something like PowerPool's meta DeFi democracy, but that is a subject for a future video. For me, it boils down to behavior.
Even if there's like broader voter apathy, when it comes to these like more like life or death or dramatic situations or just like situations where you stand to be impacted in a more direct way, then token holders will act and will participate. And yeah, this is what happened in Curve.
Human beings gonna do what human beings gonna do.
For the people to win, politics as usual must lose.
And maybe that's the only algorithm we need. I've been Robin Schmidt reporting from the rabbit hole alongside Camila Russo, and this was The Defiant.
So nice for y'all. Now I got to up price for y'all. Snake eyes on dice for y'all. Shoulders on ice for y'all. A6 all the hate. I won't get a ball today.
Hey, bro. I could totally be like the vegan Obama. My man.
As a species, human beings gravitate towards something like that. Nice.
Whoa, 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 whoa.